Man, sometimes I like looking back in NBA history because you can find a different array of information. Sometimes you can look at a list and think to yourself, man, there's some incredible achievements there. And sometimes you can look at a list and think to yourself, well, why hasn't that happened? And this is one of those lists that, well, why hasn't that happened? Because when I think about the great players that have played in this league, there are also great players that have never won a championship. But amongst those, there's even some players that have never even stepped foot in an NBA arena. I'm talking about when it's the biggest moments, the NBA finals. To name a few, Steve Nash, Vince Carter. But BJ, my first hot take this week is the greatest player that has never made it to a finals is the man down in Phoenix right now, Chris Paul.
In this era, I got to get used to everyone's the greatest. You're the greatest to do something. You're the greatest not to do something. There's been a lot of amazing players. You know, you talked about Steve Nash. You know, you talk about Grant Hill. You talk about Vince Carter. You know, one of my favorite players to never play in the NBA Finals was George the Iceman Gervin. Okay, there are a lot of incredible players, Chris Webber, and just, you know, names that are coming off the top, Pistol Pete Maravich. So there are so many players that never have this opportunity. Chris Paul is a terrific player and maybe one of, if not the best player of this generation or the modern era not to make it to the NBA Finals. But certainly, you know, he's well on his way. I like what they're doing down there in Phoenix. And I think if he has something to say about it this year, this team has as good a shot as I've seen in the Western Conference. And I really mean that. If they can stay healthy, Chris Paul can go out and do what things that Chris Paul do or we've come to expect him to do. I think this team can make a legit chance to erase that so that Chris Paul, we can take his name off of this list as the greatest to never make an NBA Finals.
Jaydee, the snow left us here in England last week. It's not snowing outside anymore, so why is the take so cold? That's what I want to know about this.
Why?
Come on.
Why? Tell me.
Let's get honest here. Let's get honest here. Okay, cool. I'm not saying this as a way to disrespect Chris Paul. I'm not saying Chris Paul is not a great player. He's one of the best to play his position. However, he's crumbled too many times in the postseason for me to consider him the greatest to have never made the finals, especially when you look at the list of players that haven't made the finals that I would consider all-time greater than him. I'm talking about guys like Alex English, Pistol Pete, as BJ said, Dominique, George Gervin, Carmelo Anthony, and then Steve Nash. Steve Nash won 2 MVP awards. Chris Paul hasn't even come close. So if we're talking about all-time greats, is Chris Paul even top 3 players to never make the finals? Is he even top 5 players not to make the finals? That depends on your personal definition of greatness. But for me, when I see Chris Paul, do you know what I see? I see the Clippers throwing away a 3-1 lead against the Houston Rockets and Josh Smith and Corey Brewer balling out and making the Clippers team look foolish. When I see Chris Paul, do you know what I see? I see that Game 5 of the Western Conference semifinals where he was getting outplayed by Russell Westbrook and he had 2 turnovers in the final 17 seconds. Does that tell you greatness in the postseason, Jaydee? That's what I want to know.
My retort to you for this question is, I understand everything you just said. I respect all of those. Those are individual moments, though. Looking at the longevity and the totality of Chris Paul's career, we just spoke about it last weekend. 6th all-time in terms of being a career assist leaderboard. Are you telling me that player, that level of competitiveness, what he's still doing at these moments of his career, the latter end of his career, doesn't deserve recognition of being the greatest player to never make a finals?
He deserves recognition for being great. That's not what I'm saying. I'm not saying that he's not a great player. All I'm saying is if he was that great of a player, as you mentioned, you know, he would have got to the finals by now. Because the thing is, people want to bring up these lists. They want to say he's number whatever in assists and he's number whatever in steals. Well, cool. I've got a news flash for everyone who loves to bring up these lists. These lists are going to get ruined the further and further we go into the future because the NBA game has been changed to enhance the offense, make it easier for people to score. That means scoring numbers go up, assist numbers go up. The game is more fast-flowing, so of course he's going to be rising up the list. When Pistol Pete Maravich played in the NBA, he put up 33 points in a season, and that was without a three-point line. And he was a great shooter. So, you know, of course, these records are going to get broken and guys are going to climb up lists and all-time this and all-time that. But my question is, Can you do it when it counts? And so far, every time, even if we go back into the bubble, game 7 of the first round series, OKC versus Houston, with 45 seconds left in the game, he misses the easy shot in the paint because he's trying to flop around and get a foul call. And then with 10 seconds left, his pass to his teammate in the corner is tipped away by the defense. So my question is, if you are truly the greatest to never make a final, what's the reason why he made a final? It's not like Steve Nash, who could have made the final. First of all, Chris Paul's only made one conference finals to even have a chance of making it to the NBA finals. And if it wasn't for James Harden on the Houston Rockets, you'd be saying CP3 is the greatest to never even make the conference finals. Well, what kind of conversation is that? And, when you look at other guys like Steve Nash, he made it to the conference finals numerous times. And the only reason he didn't get to the NBA finals was because of that suspension of Amari Stoudemire. You guys remember what went down with that, whether that should have been a suspension or not. And Joe Johnson's injuries, there's never been a season where you've looked at Chris Paul and said his team should have been in the NBA Finals. Maybe when he got injured when he was on the Houston Rockets, Golden State Warriors, but even then, taking on that Warriors team in a Game 7, I don't know. That's we're never going to know the answer to that. But I can't think of a season where I'm looking at Chris Paul and thinking, yeah, this man should be in the NBA Finals. This man was robbed. Oh, if his teammate didn't get injured, if the referees didn't blow this whistle. I've never seen that. I've seen turnovers. I've seen missed shots. I've seen complaining to referees. This is the guy who complains that another player's shirt is untucked just so he can try to get the ball. That's what I remember about Chris Paul. Now, I know he's a great player, but he's not the greatest to never make the finals. That's disrespectful to all the other players that I've named.
I don't even know where to go. I can't let you say that and not say something about Chris Paul.
What did I say that's not true?
Well, there's a lot of things you said in there that we can debate. And it's not that it's true. Okay, I out of respect to your opinion, Chris Paul perhaps plays the most difficult position in the NBA to build a team around, the point guard position, because in my humble opinion, it's only really been done once. So to say Chris Paul is not one of, if not the best player, I mean, he's arguably playing a position where it's only really been done once. There hasn't been a player at that position other than like a Magic Johnson, as great as John Stockton was. The team wasn't built around him. It was built around truly Karl Malone, and then everyone else was supporting that. So to say that and not look at the totality of the game is like discounting how the game is built. I mean, as great as Steph Curry is one of the greatest to play the position. In this era, Chris Paul has been an amazing player. Now, has he had players that can help him in that capacity? Hey, you can debate that, but you can't say that he, along with, Steve Nash, like you take Steve Nash, he had Amari Stoudemire, he had Sean Marion, he had all of these players. Like, okay, it didn't happen for him. But to say that Chris Paul is not like a clutch player no, you can't say that about that. That man's body of work speaks for itself. All players who've won, myself included, there's some luck involved in that. There's some luck. Sometimes the ball falls your way, sometimes it doesn't. But no one can say this about Chris Paul. That man has showed up. That man has played. That man has performed. That man has competed. And he's done this over a sustained length of time where he was good when he was at his peak height physically. And he's good right now, and he's not at his peak. Think about it. He's in year, I don't know, whatever year he's in. He's still playing at an elite level and still making an impact on the game in a position where speed and quickness is the essence. So this man has done this for a length of time, and we got to respect that. This isn't like some young kid that's just running around. This kid has been one of the elite players for a long time. And I got to give him his respect, and I got to protect his respect because every player that comes in this league, they got to respect him, whether it's Steph Curry or whomever. Any player that's playing that position has to respect what he's done over this length of time in his career.
I don't want you to get it confused and think that I'm disrespecting Chris Paul like that. I just said those things as the reason as to why he can't be the greatest player never to make finals. I could sit here all day long and talk about the great things that Chris Paul has done over the course of his career. We could talk for hours about the great things Chris Paul does on the basketball court, but I'm just saying I can give you 5 names that I believe personally, it's my opinion at the end of the day. This is all sports talk is. It's my opinion that I could give you at least 5 guys that I believe to be all-time greater than Chris Paul to have never made the NBA Finals. That's all it is. I'm not saying he's not had an amazing career. I'm not saying he's not done an amazing body of work. I'm not saying he's not an amazing player. I'm just saying there are other amazing players that we shouldn't forget about just because they've retired. I would love to have Chris Paul on our team. But if we're going into a game 7 of a playoff series, I don't know.